I'm Brad.
I'm Meg.
And
welcome to the Millennial Report.
we're wearing we've got a softball game today. I'm so excited about it. So we figured sports conversation, we might as well wear our jerseys and hat. Hit him with the tailor-made hat. Congrats to Dustin Johnson on winning the tournament over the weekend, too. Congrats to King James and the Cleveland Cavs making history, coming back from that 3-1 series deficit.
Bow down.
Bow down.
It's got us thinking about the business of sports and the other things that factor into it, like endorsements, ticket sales, emerging technology, and how millennials play into this as our experiential expenditures increase over the next several years.
Right. So the baby boomer generation has formed the bulk of fans for decades. But the millennial generation is taking on greater importance as ticket buyers, TV viewers, and influencers. So let's think about this analytically. College tuition continues to rise, but interest rates generally remain unchanged or don't move horribly. Mm-hmm. We still can't spend as much as the previous generations early on while paying off the student debt. But after several years, our expenditures gradually rise, and given that millennials are spending more money on experiences, as reported by Harrison and Eventbrite, this leaves the sports business in an interesting position. First thing that we can hit on is ticket sales. You know, if we're spending more money, in theory, on experiences, then we should still be spending money on going to the stadium.
Definitely. I mean, among my peer group, I would certainly say that all my friends are going to sporting events.
StubHub, eBay, that's been our way since we've been purchasing tickets, since we've had the money to do so. I mean, I don't know about you, most of my purchasing tickets still happens on StubHub. I don't go to a lot of sports games, even though I'm a huge sports fan, because I can't necessarily afford to all the time. But when I do splurge a little bit, it is through StubHub. You know, I've gone to Sixers games, got all my tickets through StubHub. I've gotten, playoff seats for the Brooklyn Nets, now living in Brooklyn, on StubHub. So that's continuing to be our venue where we're purchasing tickets to go to some of these sporting events.
Right. Season passes, though. I don't know that millennials are going to be splurging on the season pass. No,
and if we do, here's what I think. If we splurge on a season pass, we'll go on it, go in on it with some friends. We'll probably do it like, people do for the Hamptons for the weekend, like a summer house
like a vacation,
or Yeah, and it's a luxury. So you treat it as that, and you split it up between a couple friends. Fever pitch, it'll continue to be a luxury.
Yeah.
That may be one area where the sports teams will have to figure out how they're going to adjust the packages to cater more towards millennials as we're increasing our expenditures over the next several years.
And on the topic of packaging, advertising during sporting events.
Exactly.
I think there's going to be a huge change in advertising because so much of your sporting event, you're on social media, you're sharing the experience. And I almost think that, a lot of advertisers are going to jump onto that, whether it be through hashtags or a filter, that kind of thing. I see that popping up everywhere.
I think another area, too, though, is there's all this talk about how virtual reality is going to play into the experience of any sporting event.
Right.
So if you think about that, then you get it down to targeted audiences. You get it down to really set amount of impressions that you can almost buy out as a business.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's.
So for those at the game, there might be a robot sitting next to you that's like
filming
a
it for
360
you.
camera.
Yeah. I don't know a ton of people that have virtual reality goggles yet. I only know one guy.
So here's what you do know everybody has, though. Everybody has Facebook.
Right.
So Facebook Live, very much a thing. We're on Facebook Live right now. Given that there are broadcast partners that have the licenses to broadcast the full game in its entirety, I think you're going to see more teams throwing within some of those contracts a clause that'll say, for X amount of the game, we want to be able to broadcast this to our Facebook Live audience.
Absolutely.
And then, sell advertising separately of our contract with you. That way, the teams, for wherever they're missing out on some of that income and that revenue from other areas where millennials aren't spending, this is where they start to make up on it based on pre-roll, post-roll advertisements within Facebook Live broadcast.
Endorsements too. That's something that we see reflected in the market. We see fluctuations depending on how athletes do and what endorsements different brands have.
The more interesting thing to tie in the financial part of this and the markets is how those endorsements correlate when you see a major activity take place in sports and day after stock price, what the valuation is, how the market is looking at it, and putting their sentiment on the stock itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, we just came out of an NBA Finals.
We did.
How did that go?
So as we said earlier, the Cleveland Cavaliers won. LeBron James, obviously a Nike athlete.
Yes.
So we looked at some of the numbers. And here, by the numbers, here's what we're looking at. The 2016 NBA Finals, where the Cleveland Cavs won, the Nike pre-NBA finals close was 54.50. Day after they won, it hit a high of 55.08, but leveled off with the market increase for the day, closing at about 54.37.
Okay.
So nothing really to see there yet. We'll see where earnings pan out for the corner. But more interestingly, let's take a look at like some other events where earnings have already been reported, and it's shown where the impact has been. So if we jump back to last year, the 2015 NBA Finals, where Chef Curry with the pot, Steph Curry with the rock, where his team, the Golden State Warriors, won. Under Armour pre-NBA Finals close price of $81.29. Under Armour hit $96.05 after the reported earnings for the quarter, in which the Warriors won, citing sales for the Steph Curry shoe as a major booster. So Jordan Spieth, who's also an Under Armour athlete, he won the 2015 Masters that same quarter, where they would have thereafter reported earnings. So, there's a clear correlation right there between those two athletes, their performance in the sport, and exactly how the market generally valued the stock price of that company. Another Under Armour athlete, Cam Newton. So if we look at the 2016 Super Bowl, in which, Cam Newton and Dab Nation lost, all of the talk about the dab, people would sneeze and they'd just be like, achoo. Like it was crazy. It was everywhere. But that was Cam Newton Nation. So anyway, Under Armour hit a high of 85.43 during the Panthers playoff run, and then closed after the Super Bowl at 72.56 the day after the loss. However, on the winning side, Peyton Manning and Nasdaq listed Papa John's, Papi J, Peyton Manning and the Broncos win. Before the Super Bowl, Papa John's stock was at $45.50. Jumped to $50.99 a week after, with year-to-date volume 2 weeks after the win in the Super Bowl, and then closed at 66.24 yesterday, hovering above about 0.5% today.
Wow.
So, there's clearly some sort of correlation, even though it may not be directly right after. If you look out, like as we've seen with some of these cases, after earnings seasons and after they report exactly how some of the market is valuing the stock after a major sporting event and the value of that endorsement, there's clearly some direct tie-in and how companies are valuing these relationships with athletes.